American National is proud to support No Ceiling, helping to tell the stories of professional women. American National is dedicated to providing paths for leadership and advancement through the Women's Forum, a group of female leaders who provide encouragement, mentorship, and advocacy for American National female employees. With 4 corporate locations in Galveston and League City, Texas, Albany, New York, and Springfield, Missouri, the opportunities for leadership advancement are vast. American National believes taking care of business starts with taking care of its employees.
There's the fear of failure, and it's real for everyone.
Today's guest is Jennifer Charleston. She's worked at the Springfield Police Department for 2 decades and is one of the department's leaders, holding the title of lieutenant. Policing is not a profession full of women, and that's the part of Jennifer's career she's proud of, helping make opportunities for female officers that will come after her. We'll talk about the new role she took on this year, serving as a liaison between the department and the LGBTQ+ community. She says she's committed to building trust between these communities, and that's what she's really built her entire career on. From SBJ Podcasts, I'm Christine Temple, and this is No Ceiling, a show that goes in depth with local women, sharing their journey to the top of their professions and the challenges and triumphs they faced along the way. They're rewriting the script on success, and there's no ceiling. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
You are welcome, and it's my pleasure to be here.
So let's just start off first of why did you want to be a police officer?
For me, my story is a little different because I didn't grow up with law enforcement in my family or any of my friends that were involved in law enforcement. And I always talk about, people ask me, why are you in law enforcement? And I kind of expand on that and say why I chose to continue my career in law enforcement. And when I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska, and played high school basketball. So the coach from Missouri Southern in Joplin, Missouri Southern University, called and said, hey, I want you to come play basketball for me. And I was like, where are you? And he goes, I'm going to pay for all your schooling. So I said, wow. Okay, I'll look it up later.
Yeah.
And so I moved down to Joplin, Missouri. And in that process, he also called before I came down and said, hey, I found you another scholarship for academics, but it's not in your field. I was going to teach and coach. That was what my drive, my focus was at that time. But he said, it does not qualify in your field, but it's a technology field. And I said, oh, okay, well, let's look at some of them and see if I'm interested. And one of the fields was criminal justice. And it just piqued my interest. I said, you know what, that sounds kind of good. I want to try that. Let's do something different. That's how I got introduced to criminal justice in this field, is through schooling. And then my advisor had pulled me out of class and said, you need to do this internship with the Missouri State Water Patrol. We have to do this, sign up tomorrow. He goes, I already told you to do this. And I said, I already did an internship. Why do I need to do another one? And I did it with Family Services, is who I did my first internship with. And he was like, you're going to get a chance to get paid. You're going to have a great experience with state officers. And Jennifer, you're going to live on the lake in a condo and you can drive a boat around. Oh, well, sounds fabulous. Okay, sign me up. And that's how I started my path in law enforcement. And I tell that story real quick just because you never know what opportunities are going to be presented to you. And a lot of times I talk about in leadership the fact that we are a product of our environment. We're a product of our choices, our decisions, but also how we seize the opportunities that are presented to us. And for me, that has paved the path that in my career is people that have taken an interest and given me these opportunities to have these different choices. And so I was assigned at Table Rock Lake when I graduated from the Missouri State Water Patrol Academy. And then at Table Rock Lake, my sergeant, his nephew worked at Springfield. And so he encouraged me to go to Springfield because there would be different avenues I could get involved with that would be expanding my skills and abilities in law enforcement versus working down at the lake. And so I went and applied and was hired. And that's how I started at Springfield Police Department.
So you didn't grow up with a family in law enforcement, so you didn't get to see that kind of up close. So was the job what you expected?
I had the experience with Water Patrol and with the academy, and it was very intense training. And once you achieve that, you're very proud. You feel the courage that you have, the strength, and the confidence once you are out of the academy. But then when going to Springfield, my job was a lot different from being a beat cop in the city, inner city, versus at the lake. So there was this different aspect that I didn't know that was going to impact how I felt about the job, in reference to the fact that the intensity was a lot higher of the expectations of what we were faced with versus at the Water Patrol. I always encourage everyone when they are looking into a field to shadow anyone that they can, to go and experience that as much as they can. So for us, we encourage everybody to do ride-alongs with the police department. It's a great program that we have and we do for our recruiting. So for me, I did my ride-alongs during my FTO phase as a probationary officer. And I didn't watch a lot of cop shows or anything, so it was very organic, and my field training officers were very supportive and to get me through that. But there was that little shock and awe of what I was going through, and there were times of dealing with things that was going on that it took me a minute. I had to go through a phase of getting acclimated to the intensity of how people treat you. And so for the Water Patrol, I'm dealing with a lot of people that were down there for vacation. They were down there to have a good time with their friends and family. I didn't work a lot of domestic disputes, child abuse. I didn't work those intense emotional incidents that I did when I started at Springfield. So there was the physical toll plus the emotional toll, which we are trained very well in the academy for that, but to have that level of intensity of going through it time and time again, it's good that we have the support from the officers and from my leadership and the command staff that we have avenues to deal with that. Because there's times where you're done with your day and it feels good to cry and just get that emotion out. So that part was more surprising to me because I didn't really ever feel that before in my other job.
Because you were on the water.
Absolutely. So yes.
So and talk about, you mentioned that kind of release sometimes that you need at the end of your shift with maybe a good cry, but what are some of the other ways that you manage that, the intensity? Because you're surrounded by people who are also experiencing that too. Do you guys kind of rely on each other for that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's great because you have such a camaraderie with your squad that everybody works together so well. And then at the end of the day, we have end of tour, and so we get together and we talk about the day, and it gets that emotion out. And there's a lot of laughter. We have a lot of times where we're sharing stories and things that we did, and it's almost a good brief to lessons learned also, because we learn off of each other. But you have that camaraderie, you build that friendship, and out of the academy you have a bond right away because you're working together as a team. They break you down and you have to problem solve together. And so when you know how other people, you can rely on them, so you have that sense of safety with them. So it releases that emotion also, that you can feel safe explaining, hey, that really impacted me, this child abuse and dealing with someone who was injured and intentionally hurt and couldn't protect themselves. And I wish I would have been there sooner. So you were able to rely on them to talk about those things.
So within the profession that you went into, which you started 25 years ago in policing? Okay.
1995.
Okay, 1995. So the National Institute of Justice finds women make up about 13% of officers today. And then, of course, a much smaller portion of leadership. So 25 years later, you're now in a position of leadership as a lieutenant with the Springfield Police Department. Talk about that accomplishment within your field, both professionally, and for your gender. Of course, you're not a female lieutenant, you're just a lieutenant, but that means something for women when they reach a level that not many women have gotten to.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. We are held to the same standards, and it is, I think, a grand thing that we have more female leadership that are visible. People see females in leadership, so it gives other females the confidence and they know how I can do that too. If they see us doing it, then I think makes a big impact. I have a lot of pride in what I've done. I've worked really hard, and I want to keep working hard to keep excelling, because I also feel when I'm in a leadership role that I am now, it's part of my responsibility to keep working hard and just to strive to work myself and to get to the next level. And I want to be that good role model for someone else to see that if you work hard, you can achieve whatever you dream and what you want. And because a lot of people, I think, are a product of your expectations also. I am responsible for myself, and I am the one who creates that intrinsic motivation and to push myself all the time. And if I'm not doing that for myself and I don't care and take pride in my work, why is someone else going to? And I also rely on my leadership to help me through that too, because sometimes I need a little push. You'll have days where they're not as successful, and I'll plan out my day and I'll have a goal set and I'm like, oh, I did not reach that. Or I was dealing with a situation, well, that didn't go well. So I always do an evaluation at the end of my day so I can improve myself, because I'm always learning, I'm always improving. And for women in law enforcement, when I started in 2000, there was only I think there was 17 of us females in Springfield PD. Okay. So there was 6%. And then now we have 40 female officers. And it's great to see that increase. And I think also what the big impact and why we have more, of course, our recruiting has improved as years have gone on. But I think a lot of people see more female officers. And I think that really makes a difference, because they know if they see other females that are working in that field, that they can achieve that too.
Yeah. And I wonder too within that, because, there's like a difference between like being allowed to take a role and then being like welcomed to take a role. So when we talk about female police officers, like how has the climate changed for you within departments from the start of your career till now?
The big thing I think is, for me, of course, is the confidence level. When I first started, for me, there wasn't as many female leadership. So of course it was more intimidating, is how I felt. As I can see time has passed and the progression, for example, our last academy, we had 3 females who took leadership roles. So we had one female who was a valedictorian for the class, so she was top honors for academics. We had the other female she was awarded the Leadership Award, which was voted on by her peers and then is approved by the instructors also, for her actual skills and abilities of leadership through that academy. And then for their class speaker was a female. And then also there were 2 females that were leaders within the squads. There was 4 squads out of that academy. And within those 2 of those females that were in that class, they were also working at the police department, and we interacted with them while they were employees there before they started the academy. And I think that makes a difference to have that interaction and the role models to show them and to support them and get that through them and give them that confidence that they can lead.
So is that the difference for you, is like your own perception of what you could achieve within the department, but then also like people kind of helping you and supporting you and saying, yeah, you can achieve any position within this department?
I think so, because when I started 25 years ago, I didn't have that support, in my opinion, seeing female leadership roles. And now that you see so many more, I think it makes a difference with the officers that are coming through the academies now.
Yeah. And, you know, you talk about how you've made these connections, and it makes me think of mentorship too, because that's something you mentioned has been important to you throughout your career. And you told me a story before, and I hope you can tell it again, of how you helped one of the female officers that was in the academy. Tell that story, because I think it's such a great opportunity to share how, like, one person can kind of give you the confidence to kind of achieve the goals that you can do. You just need someone to kind of believe in you.
I think so. And what had occurred was the female officer had been in the academy prior, and she wasn't able to pass a couple of the requirements, the categories for requirements. And one of them was engaging in defensive tactics. And so when she chose to resign from the academy and then go work in the records department, because she wanted to still have another chance to pass those courses so she could go through the academy again. And I was working third shift, and she was working the night shift also. And I knew about her story, so I gradually reached out to get to know her, and to kind of give her time and not be overbearing also. All right, let's get to it, let's go, you know, and you want to just give them that motivation right away, and let's not waste any time. But I knew that I needed to approach it, and she needed to get there organically herself also, and have that heart and that passion, which I knew she had. But I wanted to make sure I wasn't being overbearing either, and I wanted her to want that help. So it's delicate, because I didn't want to also, hurt her feelings or anything, that, hey, you can't do this without me. Come on, let's go. But there's also that balance of, how do I approach this in the right way? So for me, I wanted to get to know her. And I do try to do that with all the employees that I have contact with. So once time started progressing, I got to know her, and I knew she had the passion and the heart. But time was starting to tick a little bit, and I wanted to push her more. And she's like, yeah. And so we started talking about, yep, I'm going to go back in, and I know I can do this. And I was like, all right. But then it was another month, and then it was another month. And I said, all right, do you want to be in the academy? Yes. And what's holding you back? And well, I don't want to fail again. There's the fear of failure, and it's real for everyone. And I said, we can do this if we structure it, we put a plan together. And so I gave her a couple books that would help her build her confidence up. And so we made a list of what her fears were, and what you're afraid of failing, where do you need that work. And we had a conversation for a couple hours and broke down those abilities, skills that she needed improvement on. She signed up for a class, and so it would help her with her defensive tactics, and so different martial arts, just to get her back in her confidence. And she needed to work on, how do I engage in this confrontation? So it was great to work specifically on that with her. And then when she did go to the academy, she still kept different quotes and different things of inspiration that I talked to her about. She goes, LT, I put it in my book, so if I was having a low moment, I'd open it up, I'm like, all right, LT's counting on me, I'm not going to let her down. And it kept her motivated and pushed to get through that. So it meant a lot that we did have that bond, and then she ended up working as hard as she could and became the valedictorian. But she did the work, absolutely did the work. I was there to support her, and that was a role I wanted to take. And it felt good for me too, to see someone be successful and be able to push them to their expectations that they wanted to achieve.
Where did you learn that style of leadership, that really one-on-one motivating style?
Well, I think it's probably mostly is my interaction and knowing how people have done that for me. And I think through my background, oldest of 5 children, so I've always helped out, of course, with sisters and brothers. And also, I think I started sports when I was in 4th grade, and it's a team effort. And I was brought up with that, the strength that you have to work together and pull each other up, and you're the strongest as your weakest link, which is a very old saying, but I really think it's so true. And it's something I really enjoy to do. And I think we need to always praise each other and bring each other up to success. And it's something that also through the professional development that we have at the Springfield Police Department, through different training and courses that we take, and it's through your experience too. That's the type of role I feel is my responsibility also, because taking on the leadership role as a sergeant and as a lieutenant, to me that's part of what I want to do, but it's part of who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was that something like that your parents instilled in you too, or was that really like a coach mindset? Because you had wanted to go into that kind of field at first, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think growing up as the oldest, I think I've always looked after my siblings.
Yeah.
And so that probably came natural in that aspect of things. And then once I started the team sports, we're always encouraging each other to exceed, so we can, because we have to work together to achieve that goal for that win. So I think that also, through that environment, that was instilled in me to do those things, and it just came natural in that aspect of things. Also, through the training and professional development that I've had through Springfield, they have leadership is you are constantly working on that skill. And so it's something that I've also learned how to approach somebody on it and how to get the right feedback that you want. I also went to up in Kansas City, there's a group of females that have a group together that I was introduced to through leadership, through different organizations up there. And one of the speakers at the luncheon that I went to, a psychologist, she had expressed how important it is. You're going to try to mentor and you're going to try to inspire others, and think about the people who actually absorb what you're saying and what you're doing, because sometimes they're not. And if they're not, it's okay. Go to the person who is and spend your time with them. And so that's why I went organically with her to see if this was something she would be receptive to. And so that's part of the learning process of professional development, is who can I inspire and who can I make a difference with.
So do all officers kind of like aspire to like ascend the ranks like you have, or to be in these leadership roles?
I think everybody has their own style, their own level, their own achievements of success, because every job is so important, and there is success in every type of job that we have. And there's some, when I teach for a leadership organization in policing for our department, there are the concepts they talk about, which is high growth needs and low growth needs. And they categorize people who are constantly pushing and they want to go to the next level, and I want to do the next thing, I need another challenge, I need this. Or if you have low growth needs, there's someone who feels so comfortable in the job that they are at, and they have fine-tuned it, they are an expert in that field, and that's what they want to do. And for me as a supervisor, I was so glad to learn how they categorize those concepts, because for me, I'm an achiever and I'm constantly going to the next challenge. Well, why isn't this person doing that? I don't understand. You got to take those tests, you got to keep pushing yourself. No, Jennifer, it's okay. I want to be an expert at this. I am great at these investigations, and I'm working the beat, and we need people like that. We have to have those, because to be successful, I need an expert who is working the beat, so then when I have new officers come in, they're the ones that they're learning from. And every position that we have is so paramount, because we work as a team. We have to have that cohesiveness to have success throughout the whole department.
Okay. You mentioned that you're someone that likes a challenge, and so that kind of ties into, I want to talk about the book that you brought today, because it's a book that your niece made for you, and you're just like on the cover skydiving, just like it's totally another day. Is that something that's kind of part of your identity? Are you someone that really likes challenges and facing scary things, because you kind of do that every day in your job too?
Well, I will say it took a minute to get acclimated.
Okay.
Yes, I do think that what helped me was being an athlete and being on the court for basketball. So playing basketball, I think, helped physically with that confrontation. And because when I'm, in transition game and I'm taking that basketball and I'm going down the court and I'm one-on-one and going, and my goal is to make that basket, and there's people that are trying to stop me, I think that part helped physically. And for challenges, yes, I always want to try to achieve and I want to problem solve, and it keeps me going, and that's just part of who I am. As far as the big risk taker, and yes, my niece was great about putting that book together. It just melts my heart every time I read it. She put that picture on the front from the skydiving. So I went, one of my college best friends, and they're my Texas family, and his father was his 75th birthday party. So he was in the Army, and that's what he did, was he jumped out of the airplane several times. Yeah. And so that's what he wanted to do for the theme. Well, if you ask any of them, they're like, Jennifer, you're really quiet. Because I was like, am I really going to do this? Because physically, heights, I can feel it in my legs right away. But I wanted to. They're like, you don't have to do this. I go, no, I want to do this more than anything. Yeah. Because it's uncomfortable. And I tell people, you have to do things that are uncomfortable, get out of your comfort zone. And that's how you're going to grow off those experiences. And so when we did that, we got up in the plane and I looked down, I'm like, holy smokes, that is far. I'm like, it's 13,000 and some feet. Well, what'd you think, lady? Well, I don't know what I thought. So it's great to be at the edge of that plane, and of course tandem, and I asked the gentleman, I go, do you love your life? I love my life. He's like, you bet I do, let's do this. And, they're ex-gamers, and he was a lot of fun. So you release everything, so you have no control, and it is a feeling that I have to this day, and I will have throughout, because it is something that was so uplifting, and knowing that I can release that control, and you just roll out, and it is such an amazing feeling.
When we come back, we'll talk about Jennifer's selection to serve as the Springfield Police Department's LGBTQ+ liaison, and what she hopes to accomplish in the role. Support for Season 1 of this podcast is provided by presenting sponsor American National Insurance. We'll be right back.
Financial success? It's not just about money. It's knowing how to make the most of it. It helps to have your own banking expert who can offer guidance, new ideas, and smart solutions. At Great Southern Bank, you'll find that expertise along with a full-service team to handle all your personal and business banking needs. Learn what we can do for you at greatsouthernbank.com. Ranked a Forbes 2020 World's Best Bank by our customers. Thank you. Member FDIC.
Springfield Business Journal has been the business authority for over 40 years. SBJ strives to provide the most relevant, timely, and accurate business news you need to make important decisions. Locally owned and operated, Springfield Business Journal helps businesses market themselves to other businesses. Since 75% of the readers are the owner, GM, or VP at the business, SBJ helps your business influence decision makers when it matters most. If you need to raise your profile when businesses are considering your category of service, make sure you are differentiating yourself by using the Springfield Business Journal.
Getting back to your role with the police department, you took on a brand new challenge this year in February, being appointed to the LGBTQ liaison. So tell me about that position, first off, and kind of what you hope to accomplish through that role.
Right. So I was selected for that position because I've worked in community services section, on and off through my career, 9 years, so almost half my career. I started in 2002 as a police area representative, and that is a specialty that I'm assigned to a certain area of the city. And then I deal with the ongoing problems and the ongoing issues so I can find a long-term solution. And that's the overall goal. And then as I progress through my career, then I was the sergeant over at Community Services Section, and then now the commander over the Community Services Section. So I have worked with the LGBTQ plus community throughout those years, and I have built a rapport by working the Pride Fest events. And then I've gone to meetings with this group. And the one thing that we talked about in these groups was building a stronger trust between this community group and the police department. When we were in the meetings, they were giving me the history and the background of why this particular community was more reserved about trusting the police department because of the uniform. And they talked a lot about Stonewall in reference to what happened in Manhattan when they had officers that physically were pulling people out and arresting them and doing the raids of those pubs and bars there, and how those riots had started. And it was a deep-seated fear of not trusting us because of what has evolved and progressed through the years. And they didn't feel, in my opinion, and how I was receiving what they were telling me, is they wanted to feel that trust, and they didn't want to have that fear, but it's there. And what our department decided was we wanted to let them know that we are listening and that we hear what they need from us. So the Chief of Police, Paul Williams, put together and approved to have an actual policy and SOG guidelines on how that we can better build that trust with LGBTQ plus community. And some of those guidelines, you would think, well, gosh, we have our training, we talk about this, we talk about communication all the time, but there were specifics that they wanted from us in reference to how we would address certain individuals and how they wanted to identify with their gender, male or female, and that's using the right pronouns. And it was just simple little things that they needed so we could show them that we are being professional and that we want to build that trust with them. So things that we had to identify was searching, proper searches, and proper how to address them if they wanted to identify as a male or a female. And then we also talked about, because in reporting, they might have in reference to on their ID, identify on their ID as a female, but they are dressed as a male. So we asked them how they would like to be addressed. And then so that's talked about in that guideline.
So, of course, the historical impact of the LGBTQ plus community with Stonewall, but what are some of the challenges that continue, and even new challenges that you're facing today? Because, it seems like what you're hitting on there is that we can't treat everyone the same. Like, some people do need more specialized practices to really show that you respect them as a human being.
And I think that's a great way to put it, because everybody's different, so everybody has different needs. And so that's why with this group, LGBTQ+, we listened to them on what their needs were, and then we put together an SOG that showed them also in writing that we are hearing them. And so we highlighted the aspects of searches because that's a personal thing, and then we highlighted how we address them so they know that we are being sensitive to how they want us to address them, male or female. And so those are just little things, but they mean a lot to these people. And so that's why we did more training with the officers so they're aware of it. And for an example, when I first started, I made a traffic stop and I looked at the ID and it said a female, but I thought I was addressing a male when I was talking with this person, but then I looked at the ID. And we didn't have any specific training for that exact sample. So at first I felt a little awkward. I didn't really know what to say. And this SOG says it's okay to ask. Just ask what they would prefer to be identified as and how you can address them. So we can use ma'am or sir, or how if they want to use the pronouns.
Yeah.
So it's just a little bit of an example of how it helps breach that gap in that communication.
What's been the response from the community now that you've been put in this position that you were maybe kind of unofficially helping with throughout the years with, working with Pride Fest. But what's been their response to the police department being proactive?
Oh, I think it's been positive. I've been talking with the leadership over there. For example, we are trying to come up with another way to celebrate Pride Fest in this COVID era.
Yeah.
And so we're thinking of different avenues that they can take and different options to do. So they've reached out to us, which is, it's a positive.
Yeah.
So we really like that.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about how, about half your career has been, or I guess 9 years, in community policing, connecting with the community. What have you found through that experience of why that's so critical to, put a name and a face with the police department, that they can call their PAR officer and they know your name and they know your number? And what kind of an impact does that make on the community to be more connected with the police force?
Yeah, absolutely. It's paramount that we build those relationships because we are part of the community, and our success is because our community support. Mm-hmm. And one of the purposes of having that PAR officer is having someone who is the liaison for that neighborhood specifically, or that area. And right now we have, I believe, 21 neighborhood associations that are affiliated with the city, and there is a PAR officer assigned to each neighborhood association. And that's been one of our foundations. It also is a way that we can get feedback from the community members of what they need and what they want and their perspective. We can give ours and what we see. We have our stats, we have the calls that we have worked.
Yeah.
But they're the eyes and ears. They're in the community all the time. And so it's very important that we have and we build that relationship with them, because our success is reflective of their support.
Mm-hmm. Within, the time that you were a PAR officer or now being the commander of that unit, are there some stories that you can think of how community policing really made a difference?
Well, one of the stories I can think of, I was patrolling a neighborhood in the morning, and when I went by this house, it caught my eye. There was a lot of yard ornaments, but then I was like, wait a minute, there's a lot more than just that. There was different furniture that was spaced out, and it was a corner lot, and there was a truck that was in the middle of it. And then as I went by, and then I thought, wait a minute, I think there's a baby in the truck. And it just, no, there is no. But your sixth sense, you always have to act on it. And so I turned around, and there was an infant that was in a car seat that was in the vehicle, and there wasn't anybody around. So went into the home, and there was adults that were in there. The mother was there, and she thought somebody else was watching the baby, and they weren't. And with this story, the reason I tell it is because I was able to build a bond with this mother, and she was having issues with substance abuse, and there was a lot of different layers that were going on in her life that she needed someone to help her. And with the community services that we have and built the relationships, there's a lot of resources that we have that could help her. And it's one of the stories I talk about because of the success that I was able to mentor her, give her the resources that she needed, but she had to make the decision to make herself improve and do the steps that she had to take in order to get herself healthy so she could provide for her children. And one of the things that was really touching, because it was so many phone calls, and it was keeping with her almost on a daily basis.
Wow.
And then getting a hold of the father and getting him involved. And he was working hard, but his job took him away from the city. And it was just finding all those dynamics and putting them together so she could have that support system. And then when I saw her a few months later, she specifically, Jennifer, oh my gosh, it's so great to see you again, and I want to introduce you to my family, my friends, and she introduced me, and this is the officer that saved my life. And she said that to me, and I wasn't prepared for it at all. And it just overwhelms you, and it is the exact definition and example of why we do what we do. And through the resources that were provided to us through the city, it was a city community effort that was able to catapult her to be successful and her family to be successful also. I was one piece of the puzzle, but it felt really good to be able to start that ball rolling, to get everybody to work together to help that family.
Wow, yeah. By the very nature of your profession, your life is in danger every day on your job. So in March, Officer Christopher Walsh was killed in the line of duty, and that had been the last officer killed since 1930s. So, and then Officer Mark Preby was severely injured. And I know a lot of us have been following his recovery online, but how do you we talked about managing the intensity of the job, but how do you manage that fear of, like, there's no day that's guaranteed to any of us, but you're certainly in more danger than most of us are on any given day?
Yes, we sign up for that to protect and serve everybody, and we're the ones that are on the front lines of that. And part of the training that we receive, that's what you rely on. And so when you are faced with that, that's part of why we rigorously train throughout the whole year to keep our skills sharp and ready for those incidents that we're faced with. But absolutely, there's that fear because you don't know if you're going home or not. Mm-hmm. But that's what you prepare for, and that's your mindset that you have to have and to be strong. So when we are faced with the situation and we're preparing for our day, we get into that mindset, we take everything very serious, and you stay strong through it. When we are not in that mode, absolutely, you're heartbroken. What we have been through this year, and we can't explain it, but it happened to us. It's reality to us, and we support each other through those moments, and that's part of how we survive through those things and keep moving forward with confidence, and that we can tackle that fear that could be instilled in us. And we know that through the training and the support from our fellow officers and our community members, that we can persevere through these tragedies.
Mm-hmm. How did you guys, because we talked about how the police force is kind of like a family in some ways, how did you guys heal together?
Well, we're still in that process, absolutely. And it's by relying on each other, being involved. For example, we just put together a lot of people for Kristen Walsh's daughter on her first day of school. And it's being able to show our support, both physically being and doing something, and also it's constantly supporting Officer Preby too. So I make sure that I'm texting him, I'm keeping communication with him, because I want to. He's a very good friend of mine. I've worked with him closely throughout the years. And so that's part of still being is us healing, but being that support system for them.
Mm-hmm. So what are your goals for the rest of your career? Because I think you have 5 years left with them?
I do,
okay.
Yes, I do.
So what do you hope to accomplish in the next 5 years?
Yes, and you think about it a little bit, but it's going too fast.
Oh, yeah.
I'm having so much fun, and I really love what I do, and I love going to work every day and being with everybody and having those challenges. Right now, knowing I have the 5 years left when I can retire with my full 25 on with Springfield. Of course, I am still with my personal goal of reaching the next level, which is the captain position, the rank of captain. But also, I am taking on a different role in support operations. So I'm going to be the commander over in a different area, so that'll give me a different skill set. And that also keeps me striving to learn other aspects of the police department. And that's what keeps my intrinsic motivation going throughout my daily and as time passes. But also what's so important for me is to be a leader and a support system for the other officers that I'm mentoring and that I am being that role model for, because I want to see them to be successful in that succession planning that we have for others when we are retiring, so they will be successful in our positions also.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for being here and sharing a little bit more about your career and a lot about your heart with us. Thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate it. It means a lot that you reached out to us and to listen to our stories and about the police department and females that are making a difference.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe to No Ceiling from SBJ Podcasts wherever you find your podcasts, or watch videos from the interviews by visiting sbj.net/No Ceiling. This show is produced by AdSmith Studio, with special thanks to Dustin Henderson and Joe Stearns. Photography and design by SBJ's Mackenzie Robinson. American National Insurance is the show's presenting sponsor, with support by Great Southern Bank. I'm Christine Temple, and this is No Ceiling.